Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again from Film Fanatic headquarters here in Northport, Maine. So, yeah, hope everyone's doing good. It is Wednesday, 2023. It is about 9:41. Beautiful weather. We've been having some pretty kick-ass weather lately, so it finally feels pretty seasonal. It could be a little warmer for me, but pretty damn nice. Sunday was really hot, and I love the hot weather. I wish it could get a little bit warmer, but it's still really nice. It's been about uh, in the 60s or 70s or so. Still gets a little cool at night, but pretty darn nice. Other than that, hope everyone's doing good. So, yeah, so on the music front, as far as the world of Quantum, we got some shows coming up this Friday. We will be back at the Gypsy Rose Tavern at 7 o'clock. Gypsy Rose Tavern is a super cool venue that just opened. They opened the first of the new year in January, and they've been going like gangbusters ever since. They have now it's only once a month, but they were doing an open mic every week, and it was going really good, or it has been going great. And then they've been booking bands. They have music there quite a bit. They have music there Fridays and Saturdays. They always have music there on um, at least Friday every weekend. And a lot of the times they have music on Saturday also. And they have, all kinds of stuff. They've had rock and roll, they've had some dance stuff. We played a show there as Quantum really early on. I think we might have been one one of the first bands that they had booked there, and so it was early on, and it was they were still kind of figuring out things because it was a new business and it was the middle of winter. But we had a really fun show there, and since then they've really been cranking out music. It's a really cool venue, great food. It's a nice, really cool atmosphere. It's like a tavern, but they sell really great food, and it's like pub style, but it's like really high end level, like pub food, like burgers and things like that. But they're like really, really good. Everything's fresh. They even make their own rolls. They ground their own meat for the hamburger and the hamburgers and stuff. It's pretty awesome, but very cool. And I go there. I've been there. I was fortunate enough to play a lot of gigs there this year, and it's been really great. I know for a lot of local musicians because it's kept people pretty employed, who are doing it, doing this crazy thing as a source of income, but then also maybe as a side job. So it's been really awesome, and we'll be doing a 3 hour set there this Friday at 7 o'clock. And usually, the last few gigs that we've had with Quantum, we have been doing like shorter sets. We did the All Roads Festival the week before last, and that was our those were our last couple of gigs that we did, and that was a an amazing experience. And those sets were pretty short, but they were good lengths. I felt, considering how many bands were on the bill, each band had about 45 minutes to an hour, and we played two 45-minute sets. Definitely one of the, I felt, especially that Friday night, I felt like it was, one of our best gigs ever, and just one of the best experiences ever. And Saturday was great. The whole thing was just a real magical weekend, one of the best weekends ever. Met a lot of cool people, and the coolest thing was being able to play a show at a venue where the sound crew that was involved with the show was just unbelievable. Like a lot of the times, here in Maine and in general, and it comes with the territory of being, kind of a gigging musician. You have to like set up your own sound, and you have to like be your own sound guy for the most part. It's pretty much, you're doing everything yourself. You got to promote all the shows, and then you got to, hopefully get a set together of music that's pretty good or that's tight. Yeah, and then you have to do the sound. You usually have to bring all of your own gear. A lot of venues don't have their own sound systems, so there's a couple, but for the most part, you have to bring your own stuff. And so that's a whole other thing to kind of think about and to to focus on, because that's a lot of work into itself. So, but sometimes with festivals and bigger shows, there's you have that luxury. I mean, sometimes you don't, but most of the time you have that luxury of not having to worry about doing the sound and setting everything up and getting everything right. You just have to worry about the performance. But typically, you have to worry about when you play shows here locally. You kind of have to think about and worry about all of those things. So the festival was really fabulous because the sound crew that they had hired was just amazing. I remember talking talking to Mike afterwards, who plays bass in Quantum, that it was uh, it was so easy as far as that setup goes. Like, we load it in. We don't have a lot of gear. We do, but then we really don't. It's just mostly a lot of little chords. But we keep a pretty minimalist setup for the most part. But with these shows, we just literally had to show up, take our equipment out, and plug everything in, and then that was it. We didn't have to do anything else. So, and these sound guys, particularly the guy who worked at Marshall Wharf, was just amazing. Like, he super pro, and it was an easy sound check. And it felt really good at the sound check. It didn't, gave me a little bit of confidence, because usually when I play a gig, I always have a lot of anxiety anyway, and I always get super super duper nervous. But one of the things that does get me, you know, excited, but then also very nervous, is because we're doing our own sound. When we start playing, making sure the sound is good and that we can all hear everything, and then hopefully the people can hear it. But with this, so I'm always, usually in that setting, I'm always, kind of getting my bearings for a while, and I'm kind of like, feeling things out. Sometimes, you can start a show for the most part, and the sound is really good, and then, that helps with the whole, the whole performance. And then sometimes when you start a show, the sound, like something is, slightly askew, or, the levels are not right or something. So typically when we do shows, a lot of times, like around here, we it's always a little bit of trepidation, trying to, like, okay, how's the sound? We always do a little bit of a sound check, but when you start actually playing live, it's a little bit of a different thing sometimes. But with the festival, it was great, and I felt like the sound was good, and so it was nice. But so we'll be doing this Friday. We'll be at the Gypsy Rose, so super excited about that. And then in a couple of weeks from now, we'll be doing the big summer solstice party in Camden, Maine, or sorry, in Rockland, Maine, and that's the big street party where they block off Main Street in Rockland. That's a gig we've done for a very long time. I've always loved that gig, and I always look forward to it. It's pretty loose, but we usually do, like roughly an hour, 2 hour set or so, and then and it's usually done, quarter to six or about 6 o'clock. So it's usually a fun show and usually a good time, and it's pretty loose. And we just basically set up on the streets of Rockland, and there's a whole bunch of other bands that do that too, and that's usually a really good time. So I always look forward to doing that. And then usually, you know, we've been doing that gig for years. And then another show that we have coming up after that will be at the Camden Library, which is another gig that I really love doing. That's a super fun show. I thoroughly enjoy doing that gig, and that will be coming up in June also. And then we have another show that's coming up that we're going to be playing at Primo Restaurant, which I'm really excited about, which is our first time playing at this gorgeous venue. So that'll be really exciting. And we're also going to do another radio show gig on WRFR, we did a show there about a month ago or a few weeks ago, and it felt like the show was good, but we just didn't get the show recorded for some reason. So we're going to do another show on my friend Spencer Roulard's program. He's got an electronic music show, and we're going to do a set, but then hopefully get it recorded. He's a really great engineer, and from what I had heard from other people that had listened to the show was that he did a really great job with the sound. But for whatever reason, things didn't work out as far as getting it recorded. So we had this idea of doing it again, and but making sure it gets recorded this time. So if we happen to have a good performance or a show, it's something we can use for promotion or just to have as something that could be cool. So yeah, so pretty fun. Stay tuned for that stuff, and there'll probably be some more things coming up at some point in the quantum camp. So stay tuned for those. So today's show is on this completely insane and outrageous exploitation movie that I just saw for the first time and I just bought, and I was really incredibly happy with finding out who the director was of this film. And that is Mardi Gras Massacre. This is an amazing set. This is a beautiful rendition of this film. It comes with all kinds of features, special features, beautiful packaging. I love the original artwork. One thing I see a lot these days, and it's great in some ways because it keeps the whole love of this genre alive, and that people are, really enthusiastic about it. One thing I see a lot is like new renditions of a lot of these like classic kind of exploitation posters, or films that came out in the 80s or 70s, where there are like new artist renderings of a lot of these films, and then also with a lot of these reissues of these super underground movies, there's a lot of the time the cover will be of like a new rendition of the artwork, and it's cool. But I'm a fan of the original artwork. I think you can't beat this classic artwork. That's the thing to me. That's what says right away that this is an exploitation film, because all of these guys, and all of these filmmakers that were involved in this amazing genre were all about exploitation and just trying to get people in the seats to see the films, and it was all about the marketing, and to a degree also just like trying to manipulate those fans, the people who love the crazy shit. So they were all about trying to really entice people. So with the violence and the sex and the sleaziness and the low budget nature. So when you see the original artwork for any of these films, it's just amazing. I've been buying. I went to my first horror convention last year, and it was okay. It was kind of cool. It was a little bit disappointing because I felt like they could have had more stuff, and it was, we went on a kind of an off day. We went on a Sunday. I went with my friend. It was still cool, but I don't know. I don't know if I go to another one. I mean, at least around here, it was cool. But they had one booth at this horror con, and it was in October of last year, where this one booth they had all posters. And there was one where there was a couple of booths there. There was a bunch of booths, but one of them had a lot of like kind of newer art, artistic renditions of a lot of famous, old school horror movie posters, and they were okay. They were all right. But there was one that was really awesome, and that booth had all like the vintage posters, the original artwork, the original prints, and I bought quite a few of those. I got the original cover artwork for the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I got the cover for Friday the 13th, the original print. I also got the original for George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, and also Zombie by Lucio Fulci. Really, really awesome. And I have those hanging up in my house. You just can't beat it. And so I am so stoked that I got this movie. I had never seen it before. And the coolest thing, this movie came out, Mardi Gras Massacre came out in 1978. This movie is like the epitome of trashy cinema. I mean, it's so trashy and so unbelievable. It's got some shocking, shocking violence in it. It's centered around this guy who is essentially a serial killer, and it takes the backdrop of the whole film is it takes place in New Orleans, and it's around the time of Mardi Gras, and at one point he's using because there's a massive influx of people to celebrate the Mardi Gras festival. He's using that as a cover to abduct and seduce these women, and so and there's also he kills all of these women, a whole bunch of women, and there's also these two cops that are investigating the crime, and they are coming up short at every turn, but it's gruesome as all hell. Yeah, it's super brutal, and the killer, and I definitely consider this like it's definitely a horror exploitation movie, like without a doubt, but it's a slasher movie too, and the scenes of where he abducts these women and he basically ritualistically sacrifices these women to this ancient female deity god, where he like literally seduces them and brings them to his place, but then brings them into this back room, which is this like huge, like elaborate kind of altar space, and it's really awesome, and it's like crazy and beautifully shot, totally sleazy as all hell, and he has this really you know esoteric kind of robe that he wears, and he has this incredibly cool mask. I'm a big fan of the masks, and he basically cuts out these women's hearts. And the first scene, and then the scene happens quite a bit. He has the same method of where he ritualistically kills these women when he abducts them or seduces them, and he cuts out their heart, and it's like it's pretty messed up. Like the effects in this movie are pretty gruesome, and it just like it keeps happening over and over again, like on a loop. So it's kind of fucked up. But the practical effects in this movie, they look so fucking real. Like I've said, I have a really high tolerance for violence on the screen, sex and things. It takes a lot for me to get like the heebie-jeebies. But the kills in this movie, especially when it first happens, it's shocking, and it looks so freaking real that I was just like, whoa! I kind of got the heebie-jeebies. I was kind of like freaking out, and I'm like, this movie completely delivers. The other thing that is so cool is the music for this movie is just amazing. It's all of this like super funky kind of disco music, and it's so 70s. It's so 70s, and it's just so wonderful. I mean, just there's this killer music throughout this entire movie, and it's like a party movie, even though the imagery, especially around the kills, is just like horrific as all hell. But it's such an awesome movie. It's such a cool movie. This is the epitome of grindhouse cinema. The other thing that I was super excited about after I watched it was discovering who the director is, and that is Jack Weiss. And I really like Jack Weiss. I love his work. I have a few of his movies that I bought last year, and I recently did a show on a few of his movies. Crypt of Dark Secrets, which is a super sleazy occult horror movie. Super sleazy, but amazing. And then there's another movie that I have of his, which is a really great killer exploitation movie. It's really awesome. Super sleazy, super low budget, but It's more of a, it's not really a horror movie. I mean, it's got a little bit of that, but it's really more centered on this like crime, you know, syndicate or the mafia, and this guy who is the central character who is trying to not he's trying to not cave into pressure from all of this pressure from or not cave into pressure from the mafia who is trying to like take over his business and threaten him and threaten his his partners, and it's about this one guy trying to be his own army, and what ends up happening to him is it's pretty insane. Such a great movie, and that's called Death Brings Roses. But Jack Weiss, super cool. And the other cool thing about all of his films, he all of his stuff that I have three of his movies now. They all take place in New Orleans, so they all have a real distinct flavor. They're all actually shot right in New Orleans, so everything, you know, uh, the locations are just awesome. Everything has that seedy kind of sinful aesthetic because of where these films are being shot. He pretty much moved his whole camp and his whole production company after he was established to New Orleans, so he pretty much shot all of his movies down there. Other films he did was Quadron, Storyville. Jack Weiss was, a crazed guy. I mean, he made some crazy freaking exploitation movies. But he's still around, and there is this, and I just started watching it. I'm looking forward to watching it tonight. But there's an awesome interview with him. He's like in his 90s now, I think, and but he's still going. And there's this awesome documentary about him, and then this really awesome interview with Jack Weiss on the special features in here. So I'm super excited to watch it. He's really great. He came out of the sex exploitation world. That's one of the cool things that I really love about the exploitation world is that most of these directors that make these like super sleazy low budget movies kind of all came from the porn industry. Shriek of the Mutilated is a movie that I did. Michael Finley, who directed that, that's a review I did yesterday, which is just that movie is just bonkers, like completely insane. The and Michael Finley came out of the sex exploitation world, and even what he was also very controversial because people had uh, they allegedly had accused him of being a part of snut films where people are actually getting executed, which I don't think happened, but he came out of the super murky world of sex movies, and also Jack Weiss did too. And that's one of the things that I think, for me at least, makes these movies so appealing is, a lot of the way they shot those movies and their whole like kind of method of how they shot the movies and even the aesthetics and the whole like sleaziness carried over to when a lot of these directors transitioned to horror to make they transition from porn to horror. So you see a lot of those, those same kinds of that same kind of framework, but in the horror world, and where there's always lots of naked people running around. There's always like gratuitous sex, and the violence is out of control, and the story is like kind of makes sense, and then it doesn't, and it's kind of fucked up, but it's like so sleazy and just so trashy. You know, again, it always goes back to that thing is it's like it's so bad that it's good. And again, that's the thing. Such a and I've talked about it before. It's such a fine line sometimes with other films on how you have some films that are like movies like this, the Mardi Gras Massacre, 1978, where it truly fits in, and then even the show I did yesterday, the Shriek of the Mutilated, which came out in '73, where these movies are clearly so bad, but they're so good. Like they're like the epitome of that. And then you have movies that are just kind of bad, and you can't really you can't really get past it. You can't, or at least for me, you just can't really get into it. And there are movies that, for me, it's a very distinct difference. And I always think about, because like movies like this, right? You know, people have seen, the really awesome show that was on the air for quite a few years, and always one of my favorite shows, but Mystery Science Theater. And basically, it was the premise of that show was the alien and the robot characters in that would basically watch these really old, sleazy exploitation movies, and they would just basically make fun of these movies. And it was super fucking hilarious and super funny and just awesome. And most of the movies that they would have on that show would be movies like this. All of these exploitation movies that I cover. And those movies happen to be my favorite films. So it's funny. So it totes that line. But it's also, when I think of a film or films that are just bad, and where they just don't have that sense of fun, or they just have this thing of where they're trying so hard to be serious, and they just don't have, it just doesn't have those elements that make it something you're going to rewatch, or just a fun party atmosphere. And it's always interesting. Like one movie I can think of is like, I watched recently a movie that I had bought, which was on that combo pack. It was one of the Howling movies. The Howling is probably my favorite werewolf movie of all time. And it's a whole huge franchise. And I tried watching one of the movies, and I don't know, I might watch it again, but it's hard to say. But there's certain movies that are just, so bad that they're just bad. They don't have any redeeming quality. But with this, it works because there's something about it that's so fun and so utterly ridiculous and so absurd and so sleazy that it makes it work. Whereas other films that are just bad don't have those traits. But this is an awesome transfer too. This is on Blu-ray 4K. This was released by Severin. Severin is definitely one of the best companies around that releases all of the Grindhouse movies. They have an amazing assortment. I have a few other movies that I bought lately. The most of the movies I've been buying, and last weekend when I went on Sunday to Bull Moose. Most of the movies I bought are Severin titles, so I have quite a few Severin titles. But very, very cool. Severin's definitely one of the best, without a doubt. But this packaging is super awesome. Just tremendous. Special features are really lengthy, really interesting. Super excited to sit down and watch the interview with Jack Weiss on here and the other special features. The music is great. I wish this came with a soundtrack, because the music is just this bumping disco funk shit that's just so awesome. And again, it's another influence, I think, from the music has a very pornographic vibe to it. Again, another trait of the porn influence. But so good, so freaking good. So I can't recommend this movie enough. And so I'm looking forward to tracking down more Jack Weiss films, because this shit is just awesome. A total hot mess, but just amazing. Mardi Gras Massacre, 1978, amazing. Thanks again, and if you like this channel, please subscribe and keep the comments coming. And we will see you next time. Peace.